Welcome to Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde, bringing you the jazz and swing scene from the Capital Region. So we're here on 4th Street at Color City Guitars in Troy. Can you tell me a little bit about where we are and what you do here?
Sure. We're at Color City Guitars. It's a small shop here. We do a lot of repairs and setups, adjustments. We sell used equipment, new equipment, pedals, effects, that sort of thing.
Okay. And I was reading a little bit about your history. It sounds like this place, the location, has had a lot of different interesting people and things here.
Yeah, and this building specifically was built around 1888. There was a really large fire in 1887 in Troy, so a lot of stuff is built right after that sort of period. And this was owned for 50 years. It was a liquor store. The owner previous to me bought it from them. She had a sewing shop here called All Blues Sewing Shop for about 6 or 7 years, and then I bought the building and we put the guitar shop in here. On the second floor, there's a tattoo shop called the Factory Tattoo, and then I live up on the 3rd floor.
Do you have any tattoos from there?
I do. I have a couple of tattoos from there. I even have a guitar that I got tattooed, a Gypsy Jazz guitar, in fact, from Nick Reinert, who's the tattoo artist up there.
Nice.
It's convenient and keeps you inside the art, to be able to go up there. It's fun to see what people are doing. We've had one guy so far buy a guitar here and then get it tattooed actually on him upstairs, which is pretty crazy, but pretty fun. So it's an interesting collection. It's a similar mindset of people in terms of like the communities. So it's really fun to have them very close in proximity.
Okay. And you are a luthier. Can you share a little bit about what that means for anyone who might not be familiar?
Sure. So a luthier is anyone who builds or repairs stringed instruments. Traditionally, that's violin builders, in the European tradition, cello and that sort of thing. Probably around the 1830s, 1840s, guitar started becoming a popular thing. Originally, it was mostly played by women and very rich women in that fact because it was an expensive instrument to build, and they weren't cranking them out the way that they would crank out violins. And so that tradition sort of started in Europe and a lot in Germany and Italy, and then a lot of builders and things started bringing that talent to the United States, specifically New York, and Martin started in Manhattan and then moved to Pennsylvania. And so you see a lot of the early big companies. Orville Gibson as well was started off in upstate New York and eventually moved his way to Michigan. But a lot of those guys started off building European-style instruments, mandolins, violas, and that sort of thing, cellos, and then sort of morphed into guitars because it became popular. So they would build sort of whatever they could sell, which, makes sense from a business standpoint.
Huh. Who's the most surprising person to walk through your door?
A guy that's become a good friend of the shop here, his name's Reeves Gabrels, is probably the most surprising. He came in on a Saturday afternoon, actually much like today, where I was by myself, and we were just chatting, and I didn't know who he was, and I ended up asking him, oh, hey, what kind of guitar do you play? And he goes, oh, here, pull up this reference site. It's a manufacturer that actually I carry in the store now. And he goes, oh, yeah, these are my 2 signature models. And I was kind of like surprised because I didn't know who he was in the moment, and I was really surprised because normally people, when they show me a picture, it's like, oh, mine's like this, but mine's blue. So that was sort of an interesting surprise. I then later learned that he had played with David Bowie for about 10 years, produced a bunch of records for him, and then now is actually the touring guitar player and a member of the band In The Cure, was just inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few weeks ago. And it was great. He paid for John and I to come down and check out the ceremony, which was a super fun experience for us. And I know you can't see it in this, but there's a picture of him right there
cool.
on the cover of Guitar Player magazine with David Bowie.
Wow.
So he's been a really great friend of the shop in terms of has us always working on interesting repairs and doing stuff for him, but also just has crazy stories about the music business, and it's an interesting insight to see somebody that's playing at that level, but also has the same problems where they're trying to figure out the set list and deciding as a band, what image should we have, and, how do we do all these things? And it's the same issues and problems and fun things that small bands have that are just playing anywhere. These guys are touring all over the world. They have the same sort of issues and fun stuff to deal with. So it's kind of interesting perspective.
Well, I just imagine that you are a center or that this place brings together so much of the music scene in Troy and in the Capital Region and beyond.
Yeah.
But I also understand you're really involved in the local jazz scene through the Gypsy Jazz Jam that takes place at the Ale House in Troy. Can you share a little bit about your involvement with that group?
So I got started playing Gypsy Jazz about when the shop started, actually. I met Zach Cohen the first week I was open for business. I went down to the Daily Grind, and we met at the open mic night that they used to host there. And we became quick friends through music and guitar playing. And he was sort of getting more into Gypsy Jazz and needed somebody to play rhythm guitar for him. And I said, I'm happy to learn these chords if you show them to me. And it sort of started from there, and we started playing as a group with a couple other guys, Mike Jenkins and Colin McCoy as well. So we started playing the Troy Farmers Market, doing private gigs and that sort of thing. Now, I guess it's probably 4 or 5 years ago, I decided that it would be a fun thing to do, sort of to promote the store, but also just to have it as a monthly regular gig. We started doing the Gypsy Jazz Jam. To me, one of the fun things about Gypsy Jazz in particular, as opposed to other forms of music, is it works really well whether you have 3 people or if you have 10 people. You know, you have more guys playing rhythm, more people playing solos. You can have clarinet, saxophone, accordion, guitar, whatever. We've had all of those instruments show up. We started off at Footsie's, which was a bar here in Troy, and then quickly moved it down to the Ale House, where they have a real, sort of appreciation for music in general. They do a lot of shows. They've done lots of shows over the years, and they've been really kind to us in terms of letting us come in there and make a lot of noise and have fun. So we've had as few as 6 people, and like you saw last week, we've had as many as 16, 17 show up now for the jam. So it's a good problem to have, and to be able to try to find all the chairs and fit everybody in and that sort of thing. So it's been really fun.
Very neat. And when did you start out doing the Gypsy Jam?
I guess it was 2015, I think, is when we started. So we're going on about 4 years now. I think it was the end of December 2015, so three years or so now.
Okay. And what would you say is something that you might... What do you want the jam to be in a couple years, or is it perfectly as it is for now? What's something that you might want to add?
Well, it's interesting because every month, sort of as I collect my gear and get ready to go down, I always think, oh man, this is going to be the month nobody shows up. But I'm always surprised at how many people appreciate the music and really love coming every month and that sort of thing. My goal up to this point has been to make it a regular event so that it can be something that people can regularly do. And even if you don't come every month, you know what's going to happen, and you can say, oh, I didn't get to go this month because we were doing this other thing, but hey, we'll make it next month or the month after, and that sort of thing. It's real important for me to make sure it's a regular event and that it is happening so people can rely on it. As far as growth, I never really thought about it as something that would grow into a bigger thing. What's happened has been really fun is that people that I didn't even know are coming and playing and having a good time and connecting within that group and forming off and doing gigs on their own and finding other people to play with. And so it's really interesting to see people connect on a level musically that they wouldn't necessarily connect if they weren't playing together. So I guess my goals in that regard would be that happens more often and that becomes a place for this style of music to grow and to foster more bands and more groups to go out and play that style of music even more often in terms of finding other people to play with. And the style of music started off as just goofing around behind, after gigs and things like that for the guys that started it back in the 30s and 40s. And so it's always had that sort of spirit to it, that it's a fun style of music and they're taking a melody that and having fun with it. And I think that's happening now, and I hope that just continues in the future as we continue to grow it.
And for anyone who wants to go, is it the third Tuesday of every month?
Yep, the third Tuesday of every month at the Ale House.
Okay, and from what time would you say?
It's so technically 7 to, I think I put it in as 7 to 9 technically, but typically we go about 7:30 to 10, and it's usually either till they kick us out or till everybody's just too tired from playing. And what's worked out great so far is that we've had enough people that you can kind of take breaks on your own and play a couple songs, go get a beer, have some wings or a burger or something like that, and then keep playing. And for myself, that's been something that I've really enjoyed. Is most of the time either I'm here in the store, paying attention to what's going on and working. And it's fun, but it's still work, or I'm at a gig and you're really focused on what's happening there. I can have a good time. I can play this song. I can not play the next song. I can have a beer. I can have a conversation. And that sort of, to me, expands what music is, which is a community of people and the way they relate to each other. And that's a really fun part of that, is to grow those relationships between everybody, whether you're playing together or just hanging out. It becomes a good center place to meet together.
We'll be right back with Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde. Stay with us. We'd like to thank Giants of Jazz Radio, based in Lancashire, England, for airing this show. The station brings you the best in classic jazz, playing tracks from the 1940s through the 70s. You can support the station by visiting their website at giantsofjazzradio.co.uk and clicking Donate. And now, back to the show.
You're part of the CC Vagabonds. Can you tell me a little bit about the band?
So that started off with Zach Cohen, who was a friend of mine that lives down the street. And he, like I said, he sort of started playing, and he had known Mike Jenkins and Colin McCoy, who is the fiddle and the upright bass player previously. So he had sort of played with them a little bit here and there, and we kind of put it all together as a band and started doing gigs. Started mostly at the Troy Farmers Market. We've been doing that now for, almost 5 years, I think. And so it's been a really cool opportunity for us to have this sort of regular standing gig. It's 4 hours, so it's a really long gig, so we get to play a lot of music. We try not to repeat as much as possible, but that's what's sort of great about this style, is that you can take any sort of song and kind of convert it into the gypsy jazz style. And so that's how the Vagabonds got started. We've done weddings and private gigs and all sorts of stuff in between. And it's a fun group because we can kind of all just get together and we don't have to rehearse a lot, and we just kind of show up at the right place, start it off, and start playing and have a good time.
Now, was there a moment when you felt like, okay, this band is going to work when you first got together, or how does that process work?
We started rehearsing actually in the store. It was in my old store, so it was an even smaller room than this. And it was really fun for me because it's actually the first band I was ever really in. I had played guitar a lot in high school, was never really in bands and stuff, just sort of played after school with friends and things like that, and was always more interested in how they worked more than making them work, if that makes any sense. And so that's why I sort of went down the luthier track in terms of guitar building. More interested in the construction methods and the materials and that sort of thing. And so it never really clicked for me to get into a group or to find people to play with, because that's not really how I always enjoyed music. I would just I had guitars, I would pick them up, play them for 30 minutes, and then put them down and go do something else. And so the Vagabonds for me was the first time to really have a band and guys that you regularly played with, that you had songs that you practiced and that sort of thing. So for me, personally, my guitar playing got a lot better because I actually practiced and did the same thing repeatedly and that sort of thing, as opposed to before when I would just hear a song and like it and try to figure it out and usually give up because it got hard and you didn't want to practice too much on it and that sort of thing. And so it's hard to say, but we did a wedding probably 5 or 6 months into getting together as a band, and I remember a specific moment that night kind of looking around and being like, wow, this sounds pretty good. And we did a recording about a year into it, and I still listen to that, and it's still fun to hear. So it's just crazy to hear it because it sounds awesome, and Zach and Colin do a great job with the leads, and Mike's an amazing singer. So there's sort of an unspoken rule in bands that you should be the worst guy in any band, sort of in an attempt to always be learning and be pushing forward and stuff. And I'm definitely, musician-wise, the worst guy in the group, but it's really fun, and I really appreciate the guys' help in terms of helping me get along and learning stuff. But it's just been a great experience for me to be able to watch these guys and be standing right next to them as they're playing stuff. Zach is an amazing guitar player, and for me, the fun thing is to hear somebody like Zach play. Some of these songs we've probably played thousands of times at this point, let alone hundreds. And so to hear him change things up and to hear him put in quotes and things, we have a couple songs where he'll play, Mario Brothers theme song over one section and things. And so it's fun for me because that's sort of a joke within our group, but then you'll see one guy standing at the farmer's market that, picks up on it and you see him smile and he gets it and we get it and, we're not talking at all, and it's just communication on a different level is a really fun thing. And so I think it's those moments, it's not, one day or a specific gig or things like that, but those little special moments when everybody sort of gets it together and you just start grooving and you're not even thinking about it are the really fun times and the moments when it feels really special.
Who would you say would be some other influential artists that you've looked up to, and maybe the ones that aren't just the ones that we all know about, Django and the other famous Parisian crew?
Django's the big main one. Django Reinhardt, being the sort of the father of gypsy jazz. Him and Stefan Grappelli are the two guys that sort of started the style of music. Probably one of my favorites is a modern guy that's still alive and quite young, actually, Gonzalo Bergera. He's a South American guy who plays a lot of gypsy jazz and traditional straight-up Django style, but then also does modern electric blues and things like that. And when you hear his phrasing and things, you can hear his sort of different rhythm, and he's not growing up playing specifically Django all the time. He kind of changes phrasings and things like that. Another guy that would be similar to that would be Robin Nolan. Another guy who is not a traditional gypsy. And when I say gypsy, what I mean by that is sort of the tradition of French and Belgian guys who literally still live in caravans. I was just reading an article about Django Reinhardt's great-grandson who can't read or write, is 22 years old, which to me, only speaks French, which to me you almost have to go out of your way to not be able to read or write at this point. And so all he does is play guitar all day long, every day, and he learns Django Reinhardt songs by heart, note for note, and that's sort of their tradition, and that's how they learn it. So there's a lot of guys now that are coming around, Robin Nolan and Gonzalo being two of them, that learn those songs, they can play those Django solos, but then can kind of play their own thing, and you can see the progression and the step forward in terms of the musical style. It's not just the tradition, but they kind of move it to that next step forward because they're coming to it sort of from an outsider's point of view. So that's some of my favorite stuff because it doesn't stick to the tradition as much.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So if there is anyone who might want to come to the Gypsy Jazz Jam or see the CC Vagabonds, is there any events you'd like to plug? Go to the farmer's market,
Sure.
Anything else like that you want to share with people?
Yeah, we play the Vagabonds. We play the first Saturday of every month at the Troy Farmers Market, and that's from 9:30 to 1:30 in the morning. The Gypsy Jazz Jam we do at the Ale House, which is in North Troy here. Not quite Lansingburg, but still Troy. And we do that the third Tuesday of every month. And we promote those events on my Facebook page through Collar City Guitars, which you can just Google for. Or go to collarcityguitars.com. We put all the events right on there. And also CC Vagabonds have their own website at ccvagabonds.com. So that's a good place to check that out as well.
Very cool. Peter, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Six Count. I'm your host, Xara Wilde, and that was Peter Fisher. This show is listener supported. If you're interested in contributing to the project, you can find the link to our donations page on our website at sixcount.simplecast.com. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can let me know what you thought of the episode or who I should speak to next by emailing me. I'm at sixcountpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at sixcountpodcast.